I will describe my experience in 5 parts. Part 1 will explain my traumatic events from the perspective of the people who witnessed my death and rebirth. Part 2 will explain my personal experience while my energy departed and returned to Earth. Part 3 will explain how fundamentally changed I am after the experience. And the last part will be my final thoughts. At the end will be a description on how my life has changed after the experience. Part 1. The year was 1999, and I just graduated from high school. I was enlisted into the United States Air Force with the understanding that basic training will start on July 1st, 1999. I was directed to arrive at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, on June 30th, 1999. I arrived on time with a group of young men and women, and after a bit of stressful interactions with a military training instructor, we were divided into groups called flights and squadrons. Each group was sent to the barracks, which would be home, while we completed basic training together. The training instructor outlined the basic rules and schedule of events and tasks we will complete. July 1st, 1999 was, in my own words, conversion day. We spent the entire day converting our civilian lives, identities, possessions, and attitudes into military training mode. This meant learning how to march as the primary means of travel to get buzz cuts, new clothes, inoculations, medical screening, dog tags, and more. I grew up in upstate New York and was acclimated to mild summer weather as compared to Texas. I didn't know it yet, but my body was not prepared to march all day in 100 degrees Fahrenheit Texas summer heat. We marched for many hours, and I began to feel ill. Our squadron made it to the medical facility that was large enough to house 400 people that were standing in formations awaiting inoculations. It was our turn to line up and receive our shots. The person in front of me was ordered to step forward, stand on the red circle, and don't move. I was next, and my heart was racing, and my physical condition was deteriorating. The person in front of me flinched. He moved right as the shots were administered. He has blood pouring out of his arm, and I'm next. I stepped forward, remaining still as a statue, received my inoculations, and was moved back into the formation in the middle of 400 people. I cried out in distress, but the training instructor told me to shut up and stand still. I was starting to pass out and panic. Too late. Everything goes dark as I fall headfirst, smashing the left side of my head and face into the concrete. I was later told the impact was so loud that everyone heard it, and many watched as my head bounced off the concrete floor only to hit for a second time, landing on my face and nose. Others began yelling, "He's not breathing, and I think he's dead." The medical staff burst into action to come to my aid, while the training instructors ordered everybody to sit down now. All 400 people sat in a panicked unison, and the room was filled with an eerie silence. My fellow trainees quietly watched my body empty fluids, feces, and die. It was later explained to me that the medical staff tried everything to resurrect me, but it wasn't working. To their credit, they also had to manage supporting my neck because they suspected it was broken. This meant stabilization efforts while waiting for the ambulance. The other newly recruited trainees just watched a person die, and they believe it's the end for me. For me, it was different because I never lost consciousness and had the most amazing experience. Part 2. I received my inoculations and got back into formation. My vision was going dark, and I could only see light from a small circle in front of me. I felt a wave of warmth envelope me as that circle got smaller and smaller. I made one final attempt to prevent passing out by looking up. That made it worse, and I realized I couldn't stop it. Somehow, I was still conscious and was able to make one last effort to protect my face. I turned my head to the right while falling. I heard the loudest bang, and then a ringing sound, but I felt no pain, and I thought that strange. I found myself in complete darkness listening to that ringing sound. It reminded me of a thick cello string that was plucked and left to vibrate. The next moment, I heard the chord break, and the sound changed from a pleasant harmonic into a loud twang, and then complete silence. I thought my life string, my connection with that body, was just severed, and I'm dead. All that's left is darkness, and I felt a bit impatient because if I'm dead, then what am I supposed to do now? I have no idea where to go or how to get there. I continued to wait, and a scene began to slowly illuminate before me, like turning the focus on a camera or telescope from fuzzy to focused. I looked down to see if I had a body, but noticed a thick layer of fog on the ground instead. I could feel it too. I looked up straight ahead and saw that I was standing outside somewhere, and it was nighttime. There was enough light to see landscapes and animals. The light was equivalent to a harvest moon, but I didn't realize what caused it yet. The light was warm and inviting. It felt like warm, emotional energy that was vibrating, and it filled me completely. I saw many horses in the distance, and it appeared that I was on a ranch with rolling hills and valleys. I thought, wow, this is an amazing dream. I can't remember having a dream that felt so real before. One horse began running around, and then suddenly turned and charged at me on a collision course, but I stood my ground. At the last moment, it turned past me on my right side. I was hit by the rushing wind, and it flicked its tail to brush my face and right arm. He knew me and was being a bit cheeky. Holy crap, that was real. I called out. This affirmed I'm still alive, and then I was hit with a burst of information and understandings. It felt like I just finished downloading the most amazing universal truths and my purpose. This is my home. I was home and felt relieved. I felt another presence approaching behind me. She was familiar to me, and we began to communicate through emotions, some kind of telepathy. We were happy to see one another, but she explained it wasn't my time to be home yet. I have something very important to do back on Earth. The amount of love that surrounded and filled me is not explainable in human language. It was incredible. I began to turn my head to look at her on my left side. She was light, brilliant, and luminous. No, you can't look at me, and you must go back to your vessel on Earth. I obeyed, and then noticed we were at a higher elevation than the adjacent fields and tree line. I saw a barn in the distant lower field, so I focused on that. Then I looked above the barn and saw the tree line. It was backlit by brilliant colors of purples and dark pinks. My vision followed that tree line as I turned right and was facing straight again. I looked up in the sky, and wow, amazing. It was saturated with stars and beautiful patterns of purple auroras. I soaked in the views and realized that I was very far from Earth. All those lights in the sky are people's energy while they inhabit life vessels. The combined light illuminated the landscape, but also filled it with loving emotions. She explained to me that when their life vessel dies, their energy comes home and goes through reconciliation processes and can choose to go into another life vessel. I noticed that one of the lights was far brighter than the rest, so I began to focus on it. I started to levitate and move into the sky. Everything was passing my vision as I started moving faster and glow brighter. Moments later, I became a burst of bright light for a short moment. Then bam, as I entered the light tunnel, I opened my eyes on Earth and let out the most satisfying exhale that sprayed blood all over the floor. The medical staff and training instructors noticed that I was back and began to ask me multiple questions to keep me awake. As I listened to the questions, all I could think about was home and how I wanted to go back there more than anything else. But I realized I will have to be patient and I will see home again. I used my tongue to survey my mouth and check my teeth. To my surprise, I didn't lose them. I told everyone that I'm back on Earth now and began to answer all their questions as I was loaded into the ambulance and transported to the hospital. I laid there with tears in my eyes, not from pain, but the wonderful experience and truths that remained in my head. I never lost consciousness, and I remembered everything completely. I'm sorry, folks, but I cannot share everything I know with you because the point of inhabiting life is to learn. I will reveal something later that I find interesting, and humans will discover anyway. Part 3. My rebirth date was July 1st, 1999. I was reborn a completely different person. I evolved from being worried, cocky, rude, disrespectful, an impatient person to become loving, understanding, calm, collected, focused, and poised person. I've learned that life isn't short. Also that we are the gods. We cannot perform miracles outlined in the Bible, and we didn't create this universe. Our job is to build a society that has the best opportunity to observe the universe completely. Anything that stifles our abilities is preventing us from reaching our true potential. The science community should develop an observation efficiency equivalent to energy consumption. Humans have discovered many wonderful laws of nature through mathematics, experimentation, observations, and hard work. Building on those activities, we continue to discover the fundamental laws of physics to describe our universe. It's time we evolve and write down the first law of observation and discover the fundamental laws of humans to describe our purpose. Somehow, I've retained a deeper understanding of universal physics, and I'm able to perform complex thought experiments with relative ease. It may sound odd, but I find it to be my favorite way to fall asleep each night. I have discovered the best time to perform thought experiments is lying in bed with my wife by my side, a few minutes before I plan to fall asleep. I can travel anywhere I want to go in the universe without falling victim to dangers. Final thoughts. I no longer fear death, and I feel cleansed. Sometimes I will observe people fighting or hurting each other, and it makes me cringe. They have no idea how difficult going home and reliving the pain and suffering they cause from the point of view of the victim will be. Yikes, folks. Trust me, it's not worth it. The reason we inhabit life is to experience physical matter while it's under stress. When our vessel dies, we come back home to live in the absence of stress. This is how love is created. Stress is fundamental for particle formation and retention in our universe. We observe this as physical matter. This doesn't change our understanding of physics. I'm adding a nudge. Under the right conditions, if elementary particles are in a sufficient stress field, then physical matter emerges. They remain in our universe, so long the stress field conditions remain stable. If those elementary particles remain in the stress field long enough, then subatomic particles begin to emerge. Then atoms, molecules, stars, and everything observable. Everything inside the stress field is directly observable. Everything outside the stress field is indirectly observable. So, we inhabit life vessels within a stress field and make observations both direct and indirect. Then we go home to reconcile what we learned. Another objective is to learn how to love in the stress field. Then we return home where all emotions are unbound by stress. All you must do is perform caring, loving tasks for yourself and others. And when your vessel dies, you experience the impact you imparted to yourself and all the other life. You feel from their point of view as you cared for them and what they experienced. Be warned that if you commit acts of pain and suffering on yourself and others, then your reconciliation process is horrible. Only perform acts of love and kindness for best results. Finally, travel. Eat plenty of fruits and vegetables. Exercise and stretch regularly. Foster good quality relationships. Develop hobbies. Dance, play, work. Learn and observe as much of the universe as possible. Teach others how. I have faith in you. With love, Michael. Life after this experience. Since that life-changing experience, I feel deeply transformed. What used to define me, arrogance, impatience, carelessness, has given way to a calmer, more loving version of myself, more connected to others. This change wasn't just emotional or psychological. It felt like a true rebirth. I began to perceive love differently, as a fundamental energy that structures existence and allows life systems to endure. I came to understand that love, far from being just a feeling, is a necessary, stabilizing force for growth and the sustainability of life in the universe. Today, I have a deep faith in humanity. We have everything within us to evolve and survive in this vast universe. My experience revealed a simple but powerful truth. We are on the right path. The challenges are real, but the solutions are within our reach if we use science, technology, and above all, love as levers of transformation. Since then, I've enjoyed exploring these ideas often at night, in the quiet, lying next to my wife. It's in those moments of silence and connection that I mentally travel through the universe, without limits, without fear, with a sense of absolute freedom. I now feel a different kind of responsibility in my human relationships. Every act of love, every caring gesture, I do them knowing that I will encounter them again one day when I return home. This perspective changes everything. It gives daily life a special flavor, an eternal taste to every moment of presence and sharing. I no longer try to convince anyone of what I experienced. Others' lack of understanding has taught me to keep certain things to myself. But I've always had the intuition that I'm here to accomplish something important, even if I don't yet know what it is or if I've already done it. Since that day in 1999, I have never been afraid of death again. Death is no longer an end for me. It's a return to a place so full of light, peace, and intelligence that it's almost impossible to describe. Sometimes in my dreams, a loved one visits me to deliver a phrase, a brief message. These are simple yet deeply meaningful moments, as if an invisible thread still connects me to that elsewhere, which I now know is real. Thank you for listening to this near-death experience. If you enjoyed this testimony and would like to hear more, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. You have no idea how much this can help the channel. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.